The idea of allowing the child to make the discovery and not steal the discovery from the child is the most important thing that you can remember as a Montessori guide. Create interest and connect the child to the materials and then fade away. Allow the child to explore and experiment. The child has to make that knowledge their own. It's like discovering a gold nugget. If you discover a gold nugget in the river, you'll remember that forever for the rest of your life because you made that discovery. If I find it and show it to you, while it might be interesting and you go, oh, that's nice, you have a gold nugget, it's not your discovery. And that's a different kind of feeling for the child. And once one discovery is made, then the next comes and the next comes so that we get auto-education.
Another dish word. It's duck.
Montessori education empowers children because for each particular child, they need to find their place in the world, and Montessori education, I think, provides that. And it can provide it for all kids, irrespective of the background or the hardships that might be there or the trauma that might be around a child. A Montessori classroom can be an oasis, and it can be a place of calmness, of peace, and where a child can discover themselves. I think that Montessori touched on a key that the rest of science is now catching up with. We know there's wonderful research that's out there on the brain and how the brain functions in gaining knowledge, this idea of brain-compatible instruction. Montessori, I think, just hit the nail on the head now close to 100 years ago. And what she saw was that the brain needs generally 3 conditions to learn. You simply have to have opportunities to practice. We have to give children time. You have to have a consistency of approach, which is why those who take Montessori training come to understand there's really a method to the methodology. There is really this notion that we want to present things to children in a totally consistent fashion. Simply being consistent for the child is going to help them develop the kind of peace and settledness that will allow them to explore and develop themselves. And thirdly, motivation. everyone now recognizes how key that is. Montessori may call that interest. How do we develop the child's interest?
You have to have the ability to create interest, and that means you need little tricks up your sleeve. So if you haven't worked with the materials as much as you expect a child to work with the materials, then you need to go back and work with the materials. It's not reasonable to expect them to work with them when you haven't done that work. And I know we do that during training, but it needs to continue. Take a piece of material and work with it.
This one? This one?
Imagine taking the primary box of color tablets and sitting and working with it for 2 weeks. I remember going into Maria Montessori's house one day, and on the coffee table was this primary box of color tablets. And I said, what are you doing with the color tablets? And he goes, I work with a piece of material all the time, and this is my piece of material for this 2 weeks. And I said, well, what do you do with the color tablets for 2 weeks? And he said, let me show you. And he began to manipulate the materials, and it was like art. It was beautiful. And only because he'd made that connection, and only because he realized the importance of doing that.
Anyone who's walked into a directress doing a Children's House program and watched a silent presentation of folding napkins will recognize here is the development of interest on the part of the child, in the bond between the guide and the child, and in the recognition that there's a way to do something, and there's a wonderment about it, there's a simplicity about it, and that the child is able to then do that on his or her own to perfection, has got to lead to the development of a confident, skillful child.
Observe what the children do with the materials and try to lead them to make the next discovery, but don't make that discovery for them. Adults are not teaching children. The children are learning through activity with the environment. If you can sit back and observe those children and let them make the discovery and then make the next discovery, then you'll really see your classroom come to life.